Welcome, everyone, to Hello, Ernest at the Kitchen Table, connecting writers and readers. I am Jan Pratt, the author of several children's picture books and also the author of a series of yoga lesson plans for kids.
And I am Gaga Gabarty. I'm a co-author with Judy Lee Butler. Together, we write the Phoebe Cornell Mystery Series. Join us for every episode as we connect readers to your next great read. Today, we are welcoming Barbara Matteson to our kitchen table. And Barbara is a published author, and we want to welcome her.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for joining us. This is really great to have you for our 30-minute conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you.
Good. Well, why don't we get started? And I think the burning question here is, what about the beginning? How did you get started in writing?
Well, it's something that I've always dabbled a little bit in. I started off a long time ago. I thought I would like to write children's stories. So I took several classes in writing children's stories. I never really got anywhere with it though, and sort of put things like that aside when I had my son and I was busy raising him. And then a couple of years ago, because he did take up a lot of time, not as much now, 23 years later, but still. Um, so it started off as I was a huge fan of watching Christmas movies on TV. And when I watched them, I thought they were cute, of course, and entertaining, but everything was the same. And I felt that none of the main characters were my age, and I was in my 50s at the time. So I just had this idea in my head that I think I'm going to try to write something like that. I'm going to try to write a Christmas story, but I'm going to have the main characters at the midpoints in their lives, which is where I was at. And then I just started to scribble down a few things. I had these old steno books from a job that I had, and I would just write notes as I was drinking my coffee in the morning, or if I was on the subway going to work during lunch. And then one thing sort of just led to another, and I kept writing and writing and writing. And I think I filled up about 5 steno books, which I still have. I did
Oh,
every
that's great. That's
Well,
great.
it's fun. And I just look back at it recently and I mean, the original premise of the story, of course, is still there, but there was a lot that changed as well, descriptions, character names. So I spent most of my time once I got it into the steno books. I said, all right, well, let me just type this up. And it took me about 2 years to write my first book, which is called The Perfect Mrs. Claus. And when I had got to a point where I thought, okay, this is as perfect as I can get it, I started researching publishers. And very fortunately, my manuscript landed at the desk of Five Prince Publishing, and they offered me a contract on it.
Wonderful. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah,
So, so the Mrs. Claus, so that's kind of Christmassy, right? Is that
exactly. It's a Christmas story. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right?
It's about a woman who's in her 50s, and it's going to be her very first Christmas by herself. She's a widower. Her son has moved away, and she's sort of at a loss of what to do because all of her family traditions now they don't exist anymore. So she has to find a way to make new ones. And she's in a department store. I live in the Boston area. And when I was growing up, we had a department store called Jordan Marsh, and it's now a Macy's. But every year at Christmas time, they had the windows beautifully decorated.
Oh,
And they had,
yes.
yeah, yeah, remember those days?
Yeah.
And they had something called the Enchanted Village in it. And it was just it was a village that you would walk through, and there were these animated figures, these like mannequins that moved back and forth. They bobbed their heads up and down. Very simple, of course, compared to today. But everybody loved it. It was a huge tradition. You have to go to the Enchanted Village. So in my story, The Perfect Mrs. Claus, I based the department store in the book, it's called Howardson's, on the Jordan Marsh Enchanted Village. So the main character is named Savannah, and she was in the store one day around Halloween time, and she's watching all the preparations begin for the Christmas Enchanted Village. It's called the Enchanted Land of Claus in The Perfect Mrs. Claus. And she's spotted by the director of the Enchanted Village, and he thinks that she would be the perfect Mrs. Claus because of her appearance. She has long silvery hair, and she's not the stereotypical looking Mrs. Claus, little maybe a little plump and maybe, an older looking woman. Although Savannah's older, she's, kept herself in shape. And it's also the vision of this director's for this Enchanted Land of Claus to have a little bit of a more updated look for his Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus. And she's asked if she'd like to work as Mrs. Claus, and she accepts, and things just start to, improve in her life. She doesn't realize how shut off she had become since all these changes in her life, and it opens up a whole new world for her.
Okay, all right. Yeah, interesting. I love that story.
Thanks.
Did you have a personal experience or memory that kind of led you in the direction of, Mrs. Claus and this whole Christmas theme?
Well, I do love Christmas. I love Christmas romances, and I just had this idea in my head that we need to have more stories with people who are older in life, who have lived
Oh,
lives and raised families.
sure.
And their lives are different now when your children leave the
Mhm.
home and you may not be married anymore, and you have to continue on somehow and find new
Yeah.
ways to enjoy your life.
Sure, sure. So is that a continuing theme in your writing or a message that you're trying to get across with your stories?
Yes, it absolutely is. In my next book, which was just published on May 7th, it's called Beach Rose Path. There's a woman
Con-
again.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Of course, the main character is a female who's also in her 50s, and she has suffered some terrible losses, and she's about to, sorry, my dog is barking in the background. And she's about to face more. She's on the verge of losing her job, and she's on the verge of losing her home. And
Oh,
an opportunity comes up. She's going to have to relocate for it. But again, she has no choice, and she has to forge on and move on in life. And it works out well. Well, maybe it works out well. Some things do, some things don't, of course.
yeah, we'll see, huh? In
Yes,
reading the story. All right,
exactly.
good. All right. So, with what you're writing and the women that are in your stories, is there something deeper to this that you personally feel like you want to share with your readers? Is there another side to this that is your side of the study?
Well, I think that unfortunately there's a lot of, I guess the term now is ageism, and there's a I think there's still a discrimination against people who are, maybe 40 and older. And I think especially if you're a woman as well. And I've read the books and I've seen movies again where, the main character is probably a young woman in her 30s, and the mother always seemed a little bit on the ditzy side to me, like not
Okay.
knowing how to text, or, just silly things to me that I guess I took offense at. And I just want to put the message out there that no, that's not how most women, who are like I guess it's the Gen X or the tail end of the baby boomers, we're not like that. And we're also driving the economy, and we're very smart, and we still, have a lot to offer. We're not just some, silly little character in the
Yes,
background.
yes. Yeah. And do you think that by reading the story that your readers have maybe a totally different perspective? What are you hoping on that?
Well, I hope that, because I also find that there is a dearth of books whose main characters are, people, women specifically. in this age group. And I I hope it attracts the women in my age group, but I also hope it attracts younger women as well. I actually did have a younger woman who I probably in her late 20s or early 30s who read The Perfect Mrs. Claus. And she had commented to me that, she didn't think she would be so interested reading about, somebody who was older than her, but she actually loved the book and just
Ah,
loved the fact that this is happening, like new romances, new friendships are developing for people, for women who are in their 50s and beyond.
yeah. All right, good. Now, what about that? Character development is kind of what I'm hearing from you. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you develop your characters or what you intend with the characters?
So I think there's a lot of me in these characters, a lot of things that have happened to me in my life, as a married woman, as a mother of a son specifically. And I also pull little pieces of like the women who have been very influential in my life as well, like my mother. My mother back in the 70s, she's a little bit ahead of her time. She was a single mother raising three children, one of whom had autism, so which was very different back in the 1970s than it is now. So it was a
Yes.
difficult life, and she was a very, very strong woman, and I admired her for everything that she did. She was sort of like I said, she was ahead of her time in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
And then my grandmothers and my aunt as well. I take a lot of the characteristics from the women in my.
Yeah, I get that. It's very easy to do, isn't it? It's like,
It is. So it's like my characters are, composites of all these different women in my family.
do they know that they are in your books?
So, well, I hope they do because, well, unfortunately, they are deceased. So I think they do. I know my cousins have read it. My sister has read it, and other women family members have read it too. And they say, "Oh, I know what that means.
Oh, yeah.
I know who that is." I had
Yeah.
my cousin's aunt had actually telephoned me and I missed her phone call, but she had written me a letter and she said, this is that, this is this in the family, that's that. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I appreciate you really reading the book and understanding it.
Oh, that's very funny. Very
Yeah.
good. Yeah, thank you. Well, what about literary influences? What are you reading, and does what you are reading have any influence on the way that you are writing?
I think it does. I'm a huge reader. I have been ever since I can remember. My mother always took us to the library, started off with Nancy Drew, who was one of my heroines growing up.
Very good. Yes.
Yeah, and I do like to read a lot of the classics too. Right now, I'm actually reading a book by, and I always have a terrible time pronouncing her name, Daphne du Maurier. I'm sure you know who I mean. My cousin Rachel. I'm reading one of her lesser known works for the second time. It's called Frenchman's Creek. It's about
Oh,
a pirate. And I
make a
love
note
it.
of that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Frenchman's Creek. She's one of my very favorite authors. And I do pay attention to writing styles. I do read a lot of contemporary as well. Not so much because sometimes, again, it's hard to find the characters that I'm interested in with the more popular types of literature. So I always go back to the classics. Over the winter time, I reread Jane Eyre.
Oh,
Last year, I worked on Gone with the Wind, which I've read several times. And I do have a couple of favorite authors. Lou Anne Rice is one of them. And there's
sure.
also another author by the name of Lisa Wingate that I follow.
Okay. All right.
Always looking
Making a
forward to a
note
story.
of Lisa. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. So what are your habits? You just write whenever, or what are your writing habits?
Yeah, no, my writing habits, I try to be extremely disciplined with them because it's something that can be very hard to do for me because I'll get up, I'll do my things, and then I'll get distracted. So when I do write, when I am working on something, I get up very, very early, probably around 4 o'clock in the morning, get things done that I need to do. And then I sit down for a good 3 hours and I just write. And my first draft is always the worst, of course, because I always just say to myself, just get it down, just write it, just get it down, because there'll be plenty of time to go over and edit. So I'm actually right now waiting for the edits to come back on the sequel that I have written for Beach Rose Path. So once I get those back, I'll go into the same routine. I'll just get up very, very early, spend a few hours doing it, and then get back to my day. And then
All
if
right.
something bounces into my head for some reason, I'll always try to keep a notebook around to jot it.
Sure. Yeah, excellent idea. Excellent idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of my questions is, for aspiring writers, do you have any advice or a discovery that you would want to share with us?
I think there's so many ways now to be published too. You can do traditional, independent, self-publish. I am with an independent publisher, so it's on the traditional side as well too. And if you just feel that you have that book inside of you, like I did with my first book, just you just have to dedicate the time to do it. That no matter what time of the day, I work better in the morning, some people work better in the evening, and
Mhm.
just believe in yourself and just don't give up on it, because
Yeah.
I was 58 years old when my first book was published, so
Oh,
never too late.
yeah, never too late. Yeah, that probably is a pretty good model to live by and to
Yeah.
advise other writers coming in. Yeah, never too
Yeah,
late, never
exactly.
too
Yeah.
late.
And
Yeah.
just believe in yourself and just, persevere.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that happens when you have finished your first effort, what about this editing and revision thing? Can you give us a take on writers coming into it? What happens with editing and revision?
So I'm always terrified when I get my edits back.
Way to
Oh,
go.
I'm just like, oh my God, they're going to hate it. They're going to want to have me change this, that, and the other thing. And of course, changes do have to be made, because there are things I think that you don't see when you're actually in the writing process. There might be some plot holes, or, somebody's eyes might change color accidentally. So, there's those little things too. And sometimes it's hard to see a comment where it's like, this is just, this is not helping the story. And it's something that you thought originally it was, and you really hate to take it out. And when you do take it out, or you edit it in the way that your editor thinks it should be, you do realize that the editor absolutely knows what in my case, it was a she is talking about. Because when I would go back after I take my eyes off it for a while, sometimes I'll just take a break and not look at something for a couple of weeks. And then I reread it and I say, yeah, that's much better, much, much better. It's really hard. The editing process is a very difficult process, but it's just so well worth it. And you do learn so much through the whole editing process as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Maybe having a thick skin would be good advice
Yes,
for
you
new
do.
writers.
Yeah, yeah. Don't take it personally. If you have an editor at that certain point, you're definitely going to be published. So that hard part is over. But I think if you have a very good editor, they're working with you, they're not working against you, and they want to see you succeed as well.
Well, if you succeed, they succeed. So
That's true too.
yeah,
Yeah,
we're all in this together.
it's true.
I had someone I was interviewing a few weeks ago and asked him if he was doing his own editing. He actually wrote a book last summer, and when he went to edit, he threw the entire book out. And what a heartbreak that was. But he's like,
Yeah,
it didn't work. It's like you have to have thick skin, thick skin.
you
So good.
do.
All right. And one more thing, as you go forward, now you're writing a second book. follow up to another book, or what are you doing?
Yeah,
You,
so right now, over the winter time, my job schedule allows me because it's a seasonal type of a job. I
okay.
I work for a tourism company in
Oh,
Boston.
oh,
So in the
fun.
summer, yeah, yeah, it is. It's busy. It's crazy busy right now. So it's still open during the winter time, but the hours are, you know, not even half of what I work during the summer. So I write mostly during the winter because it gives me enough time to do it. So the book that I just finished this past winter, it is a sequel to my book that just came out in May, Beach Rose Path. So it's a continuation of what happens to the characters after Beach Rose Path ends.
Ooh, fun, fun, fun. I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, there's some secrets that are revealed,
Yeah.
life-changing events, maybe a
Ah.
wedding or two. We'll see.
So, do you ever have the premonition that you should go back and rewrite book number one with what you've discovered in the sequel?
Um, There were a couple of things that, yeah, that it's funny you say that. There are a couple of things I thought, oh, maybe I should have done that a little bit differently, but it's like, yeah, it's okay. It's fine. Only I know that. So,
Okay, all right. I won't go further on that one. And so you're writing a sequel, and what about the coming couple of years? More of the sequels, or what are you intending to do?
yeah, so I would somehow like the Beach Rose Path books to be a little bit of a series.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm thinking of ideas for a third book, but I'd like to just step away from it for a little bit, and I'd like to try, I don't know, try to stretch my writing wings a little bit. And I've been thinking of something else, something more like, because I do like gothic books like, My Cousin Rachel, Frenchman's Creek. I thought maybe I might try something like a contemporary gothic story. I have an idea. I started to write it, so we'll see
Okay,
where.
all right. So for readers watching us, get ready, I guess, because there could be a
Yes.
little bit of a genre change,
I think
perhaps.
so. Yeah, I'd like to. I absolutely do want to stick with my Beach Rose characters, Beach Rose Path characters, of course, because I do love them and I think they're great, great people. And I think readers would like to see what happens in their lives over the next few years. But I think sometimes if to get better ideas for the characters that you have in the series, you should step away from them for even just a little bit. That way,
Okay.
it's a little more fresher too. And for me, anyway. So I think
Mhm.
I'm going to develop some newer characters and then eventually go back to them.
Okay, great advice. Thanks for sharing that. That's
Yeah, of
good.
course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
that. All right. Well, you've mentioned Beach Rose Path a couple of times. I'd invite you to maybe share with us a bit of a reading. Are you
Yes,
going to read from Beach
yes,
Rose Path?
yes. I
Okay.
have it
All
right
right. We
here.
have some time. Great, great. Show us the
Okay.
cover, Pat.
I'm so
Can you
sorry.
show us the cover?
Oh, of course. Yes.
All right.
You can all see that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, very
Okay. It
nice.
is. The cover is beautiful, and that's due to a person by the name of Marianne Nowicki who works with Five Prince Publishing. I had an idea of what I wanted for the cover, but when I saw this cover, it just blew me away. It was absolutely, it's
You
a
loved
perfect
it.
fit.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, you
Yeah,
loved it instantly. Yeah.
I really did.
Good. And
Yeah.
that's another piece of advice. Thank you.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
it's hard to decide what should the cover look like, but
It is hard to decide. So I'm even thinking now of what my cover for the sequel should look like. I have an idea, and I'm sure it's going to be just as beautiful, but this just to me it evokes the story takes place in Maine, and they're beach roses, or the formal name of the flower is called Rosa rugosa, and they're
oh,
quite prominent in the New England area, and they're just a beautiful,
okay.
beautiful flower. So
All
uh,
right, great.
the
Thank you.
title as well. Okay,
All
should I?
right, good. Yeah, go ahead. We're ready
Okay.
and waiting. Thank
All
you.
right. Steam floated from the spout of the stainless steel electric tea kettle. Instead of heading to her cottage, Charlotte had decided to return to Lochlady's after her meeting with Hamish, wanting to spend as much time in the pro shop as possible before the new management descended upon it. She poured the scalding water into her favorite teacup that she kept in the shop, a delicate bone china cup painted with red and pink roses. It was part of her parents' wedding china that Charlotte inherited and had planned to use for her own wedding someday. Every time she sipped tea from the cup, thoughts of what might have been flooded her mind, but especially today. While Charlotte let her favorite peppermint green tea steep, she took a small key from the inside of a slim golf glove that she kept in the basket of miscellaneous junk under her computer. She pulled a small cedar box from under the counter, one she received from a local furniture store when she graduated from high school, a type of miniature hope chest. Charlotte inserted the little key into the lock. She opened the box and sorted through some of her life's keepsakes, the tassels from the graduation hats from high school and college, a yellow newspaper article detailing Princess Diana's wedding dress, and a small black velvet box. She took the velvet box, cradled it in her hands, and gently pulled the lid open. Inside of the soft box sat a ring, her engagement ring. It was a beautiful 2-carat oval-cut emerald that shone like newly sprouted spring grass. The emerald was surrounded by 12 diamonds that twinkled like stars in a summer sky. It was breathtaking and stunning, but Charlotte felt the velvet box was a better place for it than her left ring finger. Landon and Peppy were no longer here, and this was a symbol of their future.
Wow. Very nice. Thank you so much. That
Thank
was great.
you. Thank
Well,
you.
I look forward to reading the rest of it. So
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I
have
hope
a
you enjoy
reader
it.
in me. Very good. Well, Barbara Matteson, thank you so much for coming to our kitchen table. It's
Of
been
course.
a fun conversation. I really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed
And
it too, and thank you so much for your time. I really, really
yeah,
appreciate it.
well, hopefully your readers can connect a little bit stronger with you as a writer and with the stories that you're telling. So
That would be
best of
great.
luck to you. We look
Thank you.
forward
Thank you.
to tracking you going down the road. So
Appreciate
thanks a
it.
lot. Have a great weekend. Goodbye for now.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for listening to this informal conversation with today's author.
Join us next time as we connect writers and readers around the kitchen table.